When the news broke that Justice Antonin Scalia had died in West Texas, the paper that broke the news was the San Antonio Express. And the lead from the Express was almost too surprising to absorb. Associate Justice Antonin Scalia was found dead of apparent natural causes Saturday on a luxury resort in West Texas. As that unbelievable news started to circulate, the national press struggled to catch up to the San Antonio paper and confirm the story. And in fairness, this started off as a startling story, right? It's very rare for a Supreme Court justice to die in office. It has happened one other time since the 1950s. But beyond just the basic, hard-to-believe nature of this story, there have also been some startling details, or maybe startling lack of details, about what exactly happened here. After the staff at the ranch/hotel found Justice Scalia's body in his room, it then reportedly took them several hours before anybody was able to contact a justice of the peace, who would then move ahead with a declaration of death and the disposition of the body. When they finally did, after several hours, find a justice of the peace, it was Presidio County Judge Cinderella Guevara. She pronounced Justice Scalia dead over the phone without ever seeing his body. Judge Guevara said she made her decision to pronounce him dead based on the advice of law enforcement at the scene and based on a phone call with Justice Scalia's doctor. In terms of getting a more definitive cause of the justice's death, there was no autopsy performed on his body. Justice Guevara said she initially decided an autopsy should be done, but then she changed her mind. The U.S. Marshal Service is responsible for the security of justices and judges. The Marshal Service is very, very good at what they do. But the Marshal Service put out a statement saying that Justice Scalia had declined the opportunity to have marshals with him on this trip to Texas. And so there were no U.S. Marshals on scene when he died. So you put all those things together, and one of the things that's going to happen, it's already started happening in the immediate wake of the sad death of Justice Scalia, is that there are going to be a lot of conspiracy theories about the justice's death. The mother of all conspiracists, Alex Jones, is already insisting that not only did President Obama kill Justice Scalia, but President Obama has his next two victims lined up already. And they, of course, are Donald Trump and Ron Paul. Ron Paul? Really? Yeah. The other thing that's going to happen in the immediate aftermath of the justice's death, though, is that this Supreme Court term is now turned on its head, including what basically amounts to reversals now of some of the most controversial policies of our time. In some cases, very serious stuff is going to get turned around now almost instantly with Justice Scalia's death. And we've got more on that very substantive story ahead. Stay with us. 10 days after he left office, Virginia Republican Governor Bob McDonnell was charged in a 14-count felony corruption indictment. He was the first Virginia governor to ever face criminal charges, and there have been a lot of Virginia governors. Bob McDonnell was convicted in 2014. His conviction was upheld on appeal last year. He was sentenced to federal prison time. That sentence came down last January. But former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell has still yet to set foot in prison. And that's because the United States Supreme Court agreed to hear his last chance Hail Mary appeal. And the court said he could stay out of prison until the Supreme Court had a chance to rule on his case. Now, nobody knows for sure, but Justice Antonin Scalia, who died unexpectedly this weekend, he was seen as one of the justices who was most likely to have been sympathetic to Bob McDonnell's case. Now that Justice Scalia has passed away, it's therefore that much less likely that Governor Bob McDonnell will find 5 Supreme Court justices to rule in his favor and keep him out of prison. With one empty seat now on the court, if the court deadlocks at 4-4 in his case, the practical effect of that for Bob McDonnell is that the Supreme Court will basically have had no effect on his case, and the lower court ruling will therefore stand, and he will therefore have to report to prison at long last. And that's just one little thing. That Bob McDonnell story, that's like maybe the least consequential case left hanging at the court after this weekend's sad and extraordinary news. Joining us now is somebody I have filed on speed dial on my phone under Supreme Court emergency. Dahlia Lith, senior editor at Slate, one of the best court watchers I know. Dahlia, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I know the Bob McDonnell case isn't the end-all, be-all, but I wanted an illustration of sort of one thing that materially is going to change here because of what happened this weekend. Did I explain that right about his case, about what might happen there?
That's what's going to happen. Fourth Circuit ruling stands. I think he goes to jail.
Wow. What are the most consequential active cases that are going to be affected by Justice Scalia's death? What are the high points we should be looking for here?
You know, this term was going to be nuts anyhow, Rachel. We had affirmative action on the docket. We have abortion on the docket. We have Hobby Lobby 2.0, the contraception mandate on the docket. We have voting rights and how we draw legislative districts. And then the court went and took Obama's immigration reform. All of that now is, every one of those is now thrown into question. And those would have been 5-4 cases.
Let me ask about the immigration case, which you mentioned last there. As far as I understand this, and again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't watch this stuff nearly as closely as you do and as other people in this business do. But as far as I understand it with that immigration case, there's a lower court that has said, no, President Obama can't do what he wants to in terms of his immigration policy. Other circuit courts, though, have not necessarily weighed in on the issue.
That's right.
If other circuits did weigh in and they had a contrary opinion about it, they had a contrary ruling about it, if the Supreme Court was 4-4 in terms of how to address this issue, which precedent would hold? Would it be legal some places and illegal others?
Yeah, all of these cases that we're talking about, this one comes up out of the Fifth Circuit. In this case, Texas wins in the Fifth Circuit. But every one of the cases we're talking about, you're going to have in some jurisdictions where that court held something, then that's the law. In other jurisdictions where the court went the other way, it's not the law. You are going to have an absolute patchwork around the country where things that are fundamental constitutional questions, this is what the court does. It takes circuit splits. They can't get resolved.
So on for example, the abortion case, that's another one where it's the Fifth Circuit. And the Fifth Circuit has said that Texas has very extreme anti-abortion laws, which shut down tons of clinics in the state, that law is kosher and it could stand. If some other circuit strikes down laws like that, does your constitutional right there just depend on where you live, or is it in limbo? I mean, what law holds?
In Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi, the Fifth Circuit states, you will not be able to get those procedures, those clinics shut down or whatever happens. It is illegal. If you're in a jurisdiction that the court has either held differently or the appeals court has never ruled, you will be able to do it. So again, you are going to see a country in which it depends on where you are. If you cross state lines, your constitutional rights change.
So this seems fascinating and also utterly untenable for any significant amount of time. I mean, it's one thing to have a period of limbo after which we know things will be settled, but in the political world, people are talking without apparent alarm about keeping this vacancy on the court for a year or for how long it takes. That would be an unusual and difficult constitutional situation for the country, wouldn't it?
Well, it just means that the uncertainty persists. And it's really interesting, you know, at a moment where you're looking at kind of Congress blowing up and you're looking at the powers of the presidency blowing up, that they're going to take the court with them, you know, basically hobble all three branches of government simultaneously. It's really, really difficult to go on for huge lengths of time with a 4-4 court.
Dahlia Lith, senior editor for Slate. I have a feeling I'm going to be calling you more frequently in days ahead. Dahlia, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
All right. I told you this is a big deal. This is a freaking big deal. This needs to get sorted out. We'll be right back.